Thank you. We'll go now to the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, Dr. Wong Rieger. Dr. Wong Rieger, please go ahead. 10 minutes.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to be back before this committee on behalf of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, Canada's national association of over 100 rare disease patient organizations, representing approximately 2.8 million Canadians affected by rare diseases, many of whom have underlying respiratory, cardiovascular, and immunosuppressive conditions that put them at high risk for COVID-19. First of all, I really would like to state that without reservation, that CORD joins with all Canadians in the fight against COVID-19 and strongly supports the federal, provincial, and territorial government actions to protect and treat all Canadians during this pandemic. We empathize with all of those who are suffering. No one knows more acutely than the rare disease community. First of all, the rare disease community knows the frustration of being unable to get an accurate diagnosis. In fact, it can take 7 years or more for a rare disease patient to get a diagnosis. We know the uncertainty of not knowing whether your condition will progress to a serious life-threatening stage. This is, in fact, a reality for many rare diseases, most of which have highly varied and uncharted disease progression pathways. Our community knows the urgent need to have better understanding of the disease. Sadly, many rare diseases cannot be traced to a single virus, but have multiple causative factors. Fourth, we know the despair of having no treatment or cure. In fact, only 5% of rare diseases have any effective therapies, and only a handful can be cured. And finally, we share in that desperate wish to prevent the disease. So CORD applauds the global multi-sectoral.
Excuse me, Dr. Wong Rieger, could you maybe hold your mic? Thank you.
Yeah, is that any better? CORD applauds the global multi-sectoral collaborations that are coming together to combat COVID-19. Is that okay?
Yeah, just a little bit away so you're not directly speaking into the microphone. We get the pops and stuff if you do that, but close. What you're doing right now is probably perfect.
Okay. So we applaud the global multi-sectoral collaborations coming together to combat COVID-19, to treat, to find a cure, and to prevent future infections. We're especially heartened by the public-private partnerships, which are essential to getting to successful interventions as quickly as possible. However, in the same way that COVID-19 has exposed the inadequacies in Canada's healthcare system, the experiences of rare disease patients in this time of COVID puts in stark relief the lack of a comprehensive, integrated approach to rare diseases pre-COVID. So while each rare disease affects only a small number of individuals, there are more than 7,000 rare diseases that together affect 1 in 12 or nearly 3 million Canadians. Many of these conditions are associated with lifelong debilitating symptoms affecting not only the patients, but obviously those who care for them. So for Canadians with rare conditions, as you've heard for cancer and for lung disease, the fight against the disease doesn't stop during the pandemic. Indeed, in many cases, as you've already heard, it has become even more challenging. We have received numerous calls, requests, emails from patients trying to actually manage with their own disease during this time. In early April, we sent out a survey to our patient community to try to learn about the impact of this. We had about 300 responses in just a couple of days, and we were frankly shocked by the extent to which the lack of access to healthcare and other services is affecting them and the seriousness of the consequences. I'll just give you a snapshot. A half of the respondents said they had experienced difficulty receiving medical care, such as delayed or canceled surgeries, no blood work, limited access to dialysis, no physiotherapy. One patient said the surgery that's not happening would have resolved the problem. In the meantime, I'm not functional and I'm bedridden and in a lot of pain. Secondly, about 2/3 were concerned about seeking healthcare because of the fear of contracting COVID-19. One respondent said, I've been told, should I contract COVID-19, I would be low on the list for treatment due to shortage and a philosophy of survival of the fittest. Third, half said they could not access their rehabilitation or critical service, including personal support care. So I'm housebound, extreme mobility issues, nobody able to help because of fears and the stay at home in effect. About 40% said they could not access the prescribed medications, not because of drug shortages, but because of logistical issues in the healthcare or pharmacy services or the lack of response to special access requests. In fact, in a separate survey to the pharmaceutical manufacturers, court did receive assurances that the Canadian drug supplies were not in jeopardy, that steps were being taken to meet future supply needs, and to even arrange alternative treatment sites if patients were getting infused. Furthermore, we were assured that ongoing clinical trials would not be interrupted with adjustments made for alternative treatment sites, for monitoring and data collection if necessary. So in summary, it may seem self-evident that we should not neglect patients with serious chronic conditions while we battle a new disease, however rampant it is. Unfortunately, our survey and our calls into our info line paint a stark and disconcerting picture of limited, delayed, denied access to testing, to medical services, to surgeries, to rehabilitation therapy, to supportive care and medicines, all of which inevitably put patients' lives and their well-being at risk. The underlying problem we come back to is that Canada has never approved a rare disease strategy, despite having national strategies for cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and mental illness. Indeed, Canada is the only developed country in the world without an official national rare disease strategy. 5 years ago, in the House of Commons, Court launched Canada's rare disease strategy, which we have put together, developed, endorsed by leaders from all sectors, and outlining 5 goals: improving diagnosis, providing for expert care and centers of excellence, assuring community support, including patient organizations, access to treatments, and support for research. Well, the strategy has yet to be endorsed internationally. It has nevertheless served as an important framework for a variety of important initiatives, including steps toward the development of provincial plans by Ontario and Quebec. However, it is clear that we cannot adequately and effectively address rare diseases through standalone provincial strategies and other piecemeal initiatives, any more than we could conquer COVID-19 if each province were working in isolation. Rare disease needs national commitment, resources, and leadership, particularly in this era of COVID-19. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that the rare disease community is very grateful to see in the 2019 federal budget the $1 billion funding commitment to develop a rare disease drug strategy. Ideally, this will dovetail with the supplemental process proposed by the Expensive Drugs for Rare Diseases Working Group of the provinces and territories. However, I have to reiterate that in order for a rare disease drug strategy to be effective, it has to be embedded in a comprehensive rare disease strategy. Moreover, I'm also compelled to point out that the greatest threat to the potential benefits of a national rare disease drug strategy is the Patent Medicine Prices Review Board regulatory changes that are scheduled for implementation on July 1st, 2020, despite the lack of broad stakeholder consultation. This will affect the rare disease community probably more than any others. To put it in context, the PMPRB changes, in particular, the application of the economic factors to set maximum drug prices, would put chronic disease patients, some chronic disease patients, at much greater risk than COVID-19. And ironically, if there were a breakthrough drug therapy for COVID-19, it would be unlikely to meet the new PMPRB pricing restrictions. We obviously don't believe the governments will reject a life-extending or life-saving drug for COVID-19 on the basis of the PMPRB economic factors. We simply do not understand why the government is seemingly allowing the PMPRB to deny access to life-saving and life-enhancing drugs for rare disease patients. I'll conclude with 2 key learnings that we have in requests. From our survey results, what we've identified, what we would like to have from the federal government. The first is that while you deal with the crisis, don't sacrifice those with other healthcare needs. Set up a parallel team to identify, prioritize, triage, and resolve the needs of those with chronic and other healthcare conditions. This extends obviously beyond the rare disease community, but it really does impact those with rare diseases disproportionately. The other big learning is that Canada needs an innovative pharmaceutical industry. Companies in Canada are stepping up to assure adequate supplies of emergency drugs and medical devices and are partnering with researchers to develop new tests, therapies, and vaccines for COVID-19. At the same time, they're ensuring that Canadians with rare and common conditions have continued access to the drug tests and other technologies that are needed. Perhaps this is truly the opportunity to develop effective public-private partnerships. The problems experienced by the rare disease patients and families were not directly caused by COVID-19. Sadly, it has taken a pandemic to bring the pervasive deficiencies and dysfunctions in our healthcare system to the surface. We urge governments to address those issues now. We in the patient community are ready and wanting to work with you along with our clinicians and our researchers. I would just add parenthetically that CORD has not applied for any of the support funds because we are, quite frankly, a very lean organization. We know how to work with limited resources. We have instead hoped that the funds would go to our 100 plus patient groups, many of which are small, many of which are very much volunteer led, rely on fundraising events, which obviously are not happening now. Thank you very much.